Father Primitivo Viray, S.J., Provincial Superior of the Society of Jesus in the Philippines, to Father Jose Ramon Villarin, S.J., University President of Batch 2020, and to our commencement speaker, the Most Reverend Pablo Virgilio David, D.D., Bishop of the Diocese of Caloocan. Thank you for joining us today. And hello, fellow batchmates, university administrators, faculty, and staff, and to all of our families and friends joining from home. Thanks for being here. Let's get this out of the way. This is weird. I mean, we're graduating online, at home, over a live stream, and I'm giving the biggest speech of my life in front of a green screen in my bedroom. When the university released the memo about online graduation, I felt the collective sigh from the batch. I mean, we know that this is the best we can do right now, but part of us still wanted to have that sweaty graduation in the covered courts to symbolically end where we began in first year. And if you're still trying your best to be thankful despite the circumstances, that's great. But it's also okay to feel frustrated. It's natural to feel that way when the things we want are different from the things we get. In fact, now that we're in quarantine, we're feeling that frustration more than ever. And I realized this after reading a post from Denise Borja, who's one of our batchmates and a really great artist. So her post was about how there are two things in her room. There's a screen and there's a window. Now the screen, be it a TV screen, a phone screen, or a laptop screen, it takes her away to a faraway place, to a world where she wishes she could be. But when the screen turns off, it reflects the contents of her window back to her. And through her window, she sees the real world. Like Denise, we all have screens showing us what we want but we don't have, and we have windows showing us what we do have right now. And now more than ever, we're all wishing that we lived in a better world. A more peaceful world, a more loving world, a more kind world. But in reality, our world is falling apart. We look out the window and we see a pandemic. We see poverty, injustice. So there's a difference between the world we want and the world we live in. Sometimes that difference hits us harder than usual. It disturbs us. It makes us feel in our gut that the world just needs to be better than this. For example, when I was young, my mom took me to the zoo. And there were monkeys, crocodiles, my favorite were otters, and then there was this empty space. So I checked the sign and it said giraffe. I asked my mom, "Mommy, where's the giraffe?" And she asked the zookeeper, and the zookeeper told us, "Well, the giraffe is dead." And we said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, it ate a piece of plastic and it just died." And I'll always remember that day because I used to play with these little animal toys, imagining a world where they all had names and lives and friends. Like Madagascar, but that day a real-life giraffe was dead. And if you trace it back in time, you can pinpoint the exact moment someone decided to throw a piece of plastic on the ground and it fluttered into that giraffe's cage. I was shattered. Another story from one of our batchmates, let's call her Kay. Now, Kay had a labandera who brought her daughter Ree with her when she came to work for Kay's family. Ree was 5 years old, but she didn't know letters, numbers, colors, basically nothing. And Ree's mom would never talk to her, she'd only slap her or pull her hair. One day, Ree and her mom just left the house. And Kay's neighbors said they saw them sleeping on the streets, the mom getting drunk all day. So Kay's family took Ree back to the house and they spent months teaching her just a few numbers, just a few colors, just a few good manners, and it wasn't easy, but Kay told me, "I keep telling my parents that if we can change at least one kid's future, we should." Those are her words. So now those are just a couple of examples that make you realize that the world we live in is very, very far from the ideal world we imagine in our dreams. Maybe you had a similar experience or realization in immersion. Maybe you saw something on the news that shook you to the core, whatever it was. It's like this moment of clarity where you realize this can't be the good place. But it also makes you ask, what can I do to make it better? Batchmates, I know we're all feeling frustrated with the way things are. I've seen your Instagram stories, I've seen your Facebook posts, and I had a lot of conversations with a lot of you about these things, but that's also how I know that we all have it in us to cause change. And some of you started in Ateneo, leading orgs and projects that made an impact in the school community and beyond. Some of you are still in school, like me. Kay's in law school right now, studying to make a change in the government and society for people like Rhea and her mom. Some of us, or a lot of us, are starting businesses, which is very Atenean and really great. Michael Porter once said in a TED Talk, it's one of my favorites actually, we often lack resources to solve social problems, but what businesses can do is create resources called profit when it meets its own needs. For instance, I'm starting a business, it's called Savon Cleaning Solutions with Danny, Mike, and Ian, our batchmates. And we're selling hand soap that you can refill in a bottle instead of throwing away plastic bottles all the time. And I'm dedicating that to the giraffe in the zoo from my childhood. My best friend Mickey's business is selling drinks made with the lambanog, and their mission is to empower Filipino farmers. On the other hand, some of us are getting into government work, like my friend JT, who interned under a congressman recently, and who's interning under a senator right now. And we can all do our part for the government by voting. Some of us are volunteering and donating. Kia and Jaime started Bake Sale for Better PH so that talented people could bake cookies and cakes and stuff, and the rest of us could buy them, knowing that our money is going towards a good cause, like feeding our frontliners. The point is, our batch is very capable of working towards a better world. And we should be. After all, we've spent 4 years in an institution committed to making us men and women for others. In fact, I think now's the time to thank the people who made that happen. So let's give a hand to our Ateneo professors, to our formators for Intact, NSTP, Jeep, and Praxis, to our ates and kuyas all over campus, to the university administrators and staff, to Father Jet, who is also graduating with us today, to Rizal, to St. Ignatius, to our families, and to God, of course, who has made everything happen. On behalf of Batch 2020, I'd like to thank you all for changing our little world. Now, before I end, I want to address something. When we talk about things like changing the world, we often think that we have to do these big things, these big, grand gestures that we see on our TV screens. Well, back in the 90s, there was a guy who was in a very famous TV show. His name was BoJack Horseman, and this is what he said. All I know about being good, I learned from TV. And in TV, flawed characters are constantly showing people they care with these surprising, grand gestures. And I think part of me still believes that's what love is. But in real life, the big gestures isn't enough. You need to be consistent. You need to be dependably good. You need to do it every day, which is so hard. End quote. You see, when you love someone, it's not the big gestures that matter most. It's the consistency. When you're trying to change the world, it's the same thing. You have to make an everyday decision to love, even if it's not recognized, even if it's not featured on TV, even if it's not perfect. You just have to choose love every single day. And that's the hard part, doing it every day. But once you do that, it gets easier. So, Batch 2020, congratulations to us all. It's been a really rough year, but we can finally call ourselves college graduates. In a few hours, we can all go back to watching Netflix on our phone or our laptop screens. But let's also remember to look out our windows, to look into the real world and ask ourselves, how can I change this world into a more loving place every single day? And when you do decide what you're going to do, don't worry too much about getting it perfect. In the wise words of Uncle Iro and my personal yearbook quote, "Perfection and power are overrated. I think you are very wise to choose happiness and love." Thank you all so much, and may God go with us all.